Hey everyone, welcome back to In a Pinch. I'm Chris, and today we're talking about Goteborgs Prima Fint. This is a continuation of a series of core reviews I'm doing with Puff and Snuff at the end of this review. Check in the description for a link to Ian's review over at Puff and Snuff, where, again, we review the same product, upload at the same time. Neither of us has a clue what the other's going to say. Very, very excited to move on to a loose. I mentioned before that when I was using snus before, I was almost exclusively using loose. Something about portions just bothered me. The tobacco tasted fuller and less messed with, and a lot of that I'm sure was in my head, but I preferred loose for a number of reasons. In fact, I'm thinking about doing a video talking about the pros and cons of portions versus loose. But loose was definitely my go-to. The Prima Fint might be the only one that was available back then. We're talking 2013. The only one that was available back then that I never got around to trying. Couldn't really tell you why. It just kind of kept slipping under the radar. The Goteborgs Rapé was always in my arsenal. It was never an everyday for me, because it's kind of rich, with all that juniper, and I'm sure I'll end up doing a review of that too. But the Prima Fint, I don't know if maybe in my head I because of the Rapé, I always connected Goteborgs with flavors, and since Prima Fint is tobacco centric, I don't really know why I never got around to it, but now I am. The can, it's a loose can, so all the speeds match. Loose snus comes with the plastic top and the wax lined cardboard bottom. The designs are about as simple as they get. Goteborgs Prima Fint. The new EU warning label going around the outside of the tin, which is redundant given that it's already on the bottom of the tin, and downright irritating because as you come around from that, you can see the gunk left over from when I was trying to remove the snus 24 American warning labels. So basically, before I spent half an hour trying to take that off, it was warning label, UPC, and then on the side let's say loose 42 grams, which of course we're definitely going to talk about. I'm certain that at some point back in 2013, before I quit, I'm sure at some point I did watch or read reviews on Prima Fint. I don't remember what any of them say. I know that it's tobacco-centric. That's all that I know about it. I haven't hand-baked in a while either, so about 3 years, so we'll see how that turns out. But basically, I'm going into this fresh. Pop in the tin. Oh, that smells really rich. If you can imagine I want to say it smells like a medium-bodied tobacco base, but very, very rich. Very mud and sweetness. A little bit of ammonia because this is a pretty fresh tin, and something floral, but not unnaturally floral. If you want to take a look at it, that's about what loose is going to look like. There's different grinds in loose. If you guys aren't familiar with loose, there are different grinds like there are in nasal snuff. But really they all look about like this. It's like mud in a tin. Put the moisture on the medium end and probably put the grind maybe a little bit coarse than medium. But again, it's been a while, so go ahead and bake medium-sized pillow here. That's gonna be too small. Alright. Alright. My first hand bake in 3 years, but got my Prilla, pop it in. Oh, how I've missed having loose snus in my mouth. Alright, so since we're going into it fresh, I had the one tin. I'm going to go ahead and go through the tin and come back to you when I finish it with my thoughts on Goteborgs Prima Fint. Alright, I have finished my Goteborgs Prima Fint. I have my last Prilla in my mouth right now, and what I get in the mouth is pretty much what you get in the tin. It's pretty straightforward. A rich, mild to medium tobacco flavor. What do I mean by rich, mild to medium? How does that make sense? It is the characteristics of a mild to medium, more on the mild side, tobacco base coming through richly. So everything that comes along with a mild tobacco base, the chocolate, the earth, and something a little floral. And I did read and watch some reviews on the Prima Fint towards the end of this can, and one thing that Sip Lip mentioned was the rose oil, the rose hip oil, which is listed in the ingredients. I don't pick up on rose hip oil at all specifically. Now it might be because I'm comparing this to the rose hip oil I've experienced in some nasal snuffs, which is a really unique scent. But I don't get that. It's floral in the way fresh cut grass can be floral. Not flowery, but floral. And chocolate, not like a dark chocolate, but like if you had like a light roast coffee, and you could describe the flavor as being somewhat sweet chocolatey. That it's a really good, and I a lot of times I compare the snoozes to other forms of tobacco. For a cigar, this would be like an Abu Ubaizian Classico number 9, which fits the same descriptor as being rich, mild tobacco. But what this actually comes the closest to the degree that I would say, if you go back and watch my review of Toke Original nasal snuff, if you were to make a nasal snuff, or sorry, if you were to make Toke Original into a snus, you would have Goteborgs Prima Fint. The same musty leftover cigar box smell that I described Toke Original nasal snuff as having is pretty much what I get flavor-wise out of the Goteborgs Prima Fint, which makes this also somewhat nostalgic for me. And it's interesting because in Stiff Upper Lips review, he said the same thing, that to him this was quote an old man's snus, in a good way, in that this brought him back to what snus smelled like to him as a kid, which is interesting because, you know, like I said, if you go back and watch my Toke Original nasal snuff review, I say the same thing about the smell from the Toke nasal snuff. It reminded me of my grandfather used to smoke Dutch Masters, and he had a collection of the cardboard boxes for the Dutch Masters left in his closet after he passed away, and that smell is the same thing I get out of this, and it's very nostalgic for me as well. The nicotine is satisfying, but it's not going to knock you on your feet. This is the kind of thing you kind of set it and forget it. It goes in your mouth and just kind of becomes something that goes with whatever you're doing, whatever you're drinking, and goes brilliant with coffee. Which, if you guys know me, if a tobacco doesn't go well with coffee, it's not good tobacco. it goes brilliant with coffee. I haven't experienced the mudslides that people talk about. Goteborgs Prima Fint being bad for mudslides. I don't really get that. once it's been in for a couple of hours, it'll start to fall apart. But I haven't had a loose yet that doesn't start to fall apart after a couple of hours. One thing I will say about the Goteborgs Prima Fint, in the negative, and I've noticed this with the Goteborgs Rapé as well, that its shelf life once it's opened is not very long. It dries out very quickly. This week I used a lot of Grove Stark, and started using a little bit of nasal snuff again, because I've been going on not a whole lot of rest and a lot of stress this week. So nicotine is how I get through it. You guys know I'm epileptic, so I have to kind of watch how much caffeine I use. So I do use nicotine to keep up my energy levels, the way anybody else would be using caffeine. So the Goteborgs Prima Fint became something that I would use sporadically throughout the day. I know this has been an issue for me with a loose snus that I used to like a lot that I don't think is even in production anymore. But it was the Phantom Brown. Would go dry very quickly after opening it. But back then I didn't rotate through products as much as I do now. So it wasn't really an issue unless I just forgot about an open can. Now that I rotate an awful lot, if I were to open a tin of Goteborgs Prima Fint, at this point I would have to be dedicating myself to it, because in less than a week it went from the easiest thing in the world to bake to this. It was fairly hard. It actually, I put off starting this video an extra 10 minutes to give it a chance to moisten up. I have very much gotten back in the spirit of loose, so in the meantime I have, because I just don't have the money to do an international order for a while. At this point there's things going on with work, and the money's just not going to be there. But through my local brick and mortar, and I'll say it publicly because I've said it to them, I think they're horrible as a cigar shop. They don't know how to maintain a humidor at all. But my local tinderbox carries General, and they carry, of course, the original portions, the white portions, and the wintergreen and the mint. But they can also order the loose. And sometimes I think it's good to go back to basics and remind yourself what got you into your hobby in the first place. And for me, my first loose that I got really into was, of course, the General. Back then, I would order a roll every 2 weeks, and I went through it. So expect more loose reviews whenever I am able to afford another international snus order. I think the vast majority of it, with the exception of a couple portions that people have requested reviews or to do core reviews on, the majority of it will be loose snoozes, and I'll be revisiting my old favorites. So anyways, guys, this was fun. I look forward to see what Ian has to say about this stuff. A little bit later, I think I'm going to step out in the garage, light a cigar, and record a few informational videos for you guys about snus that I've been getting requests for. I'm going to do a real basic, what is Swedish snus and how is it different from dip, which has been covered by, I think it's something every snus reviewer that I've seen so far has covered to some degree. So I'm going to go ahead and throw my head in. There's a couple things I wanted to add to it that hasn't been covered yet, as far as the chemistry goes. And in that video, I'll address what I started to, and then stop myself from addressing some videos back talking about pH levels and alkalinity and nicotine free base, because when you're comparing snus and dip, that's relevant. So I'll go ahead and cover that there. I'm also going to do a portions versus loose, not a what is better, but the pros and cons of each. And then I'll go ahead and do a quick how to hand bake loose video, which with the will be very, very easy. This is like the easiest stuff in the world to bake next to I guess next to Prima Fint. This stuff wasn't very easy to hand bake. So yeah, all that's coming up. If you guys saw, Ian and Snuff Anybody MacFeagle did a tandem review, which is something that Ian and I had talked about doing. So that's something he and I will be doing, and I might talk to him today about doing it. I don't know if I'll have the time, and I can't speak to whether or not he'll have the time, but sometime soon we'll do that, and no idea what we'll be talking about yet. But so that's all stuff coming up, and I will be doing an ode to Chef Daniel, which I wasn't sure if I was going to do or not. I'm going to go ahead and do it, along with it being a review for his final offering, Commonwealth. So I hope you guys are having a great day. It's Sunday. If I get this up on time, it's Sunday, and hope you guys had a great weekend and enjoy this upcoming week and your Thanksgiving season, because it is not Christmas season yet. It is Thanksgiving season. Wish you all the best. God bless, and salud.